Hello, my name is James, and it was on a beautiful summer's day in the Swiss Alps that everything I thought I knew about life changed. My near-death experience happened during the British school holidays in July 2015, and I was 17. My family, mum, dad, and my brothers Alex and Ben had been planning our European road trip for nearly 2 years. Dad had mapped the entire journey through France, Switzerland, and Italy with his typical precision. We'd spent 3 amazing days in Paris before heading southeast toward the Alps in our rented Volkswagen minivan. The morning of the accident, we'd left our small hotel in Geneva early, excited to drive the mountain roads. Dad was behind the wheel, Mum beside him studying the map, while my older brother Alex sat behind Dad. Ben, my younger brother, was next to me, deeply focused on his Nintendo. I remember the weather changing as we climbed higher, the clear morning giving way to patchy fog that swirled around the van. Dad slowed down, leaning forward slightly as he navigated the winding road. "Should be clearing up in a few minutes," he said. The forecast said it would be sunny by noon. I was looking out the window watching the fog drift by when I heard Dad swear sharply. The van lurched sideways. I glimpsed a delivery truck emerging suddenly from the fog, too close to our lane. Dad yanked the wheel, hard to avoid it. For a split second, everything slowed down. I saw Alex's hand grab for the back of Dad's chair. I heard Mum's sharp intake of breath. The van skidded, its tyres searching for grip on the road. I felt the exact moment when we ran out of pavement, the sickening sensation of emptiness beneath us as the front wheels went over the edge of the guardrail. In the chaos, I heard a calm, steady voice inside my head saying, "It's all okay." The voice was masculine, reassuring, like nothing I'd ever heard before. It wasn't my voice or Dad's or any voice I recognised, yet somehow it felt deeply familiar. "Go with this," the voice continued as the van began to tumble down the mountainside. The strange thing was, I wasn't afraid. Despite the enormity of what was happening, despite the screams from my family, the sounds of metal crumpling and glass breaking, I felt an inexplicable sense of peace wash over me. I relaxed my body and, just as the voice suggested, I went with the moment. Then everything changed. I wasn't in the van anymore. I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere vast and open. There was no pain, no fear, only a profound sense of clarity, unlike anything I'd experienced before. Before me stretched what looked like my entire life, but not as a continuous film. Instead, it appeared as millions of individual photographs with small spaces between them. Every moment of my existence laid out before me. I could see things I'd forgotten. Building sandcastles with Ben when I was 5. The day I broke Mrs. Hudson's window with a cricket ball and lied about it. The time I helped rescue an injured hedgehog from the side of the road. Every memory, every thought, every moment was there, preserved in perfect detail. What fascinated me most were the spaces between the pictures. They weren't empty as I first thought, but filled with a subtle thread of light that connected each moment to the next. These threads of light didn't just connect my own moments, they branched out, connecting to other lives, other moments, creating an intricate web of interconnection. As I observed this tapestry of my life, I discovered I could focus on any particular moment and instantly be there, experiencing it again. I could zoom in on a childhood birthday party and feel the excitement, taste the cake. Then I could zoom back out to my perspective above it all. Time didn't exist here in any way I understood it. Past, present, future, all were happening simultaneously. I noticed that my thoughts throughout my life were as substantial as my actions. Each thought created its own picture, its own ripple in the web. The time I'd spent angry at Alex for breaking my headphones had affected him more deeply than I'd realised. The encouraging words I'd given to my friend before his football match had helped him more than I knew. Everything mattered. Every action, every word, every thought. Yet there was no judgment in this realisation, only a gentle understanding of cause and effect. I felt completely accepted, completely forgiven for my mistakes and shortcomings. I could see how each experience, even the painful ones, had shaped who I was. My life made perfect sense from this perspective, like a complex equation that, when viewed in its entirety, balanced perfectly. The last image in my life sequence was of the van tumbling down the mountainside. As I focused on it, I was suddenly back inside that moment, feeling the van rolling, hearing the breaking glass. But even this terrifying scene was threaded with the same light I'd seen between all the other moments. I understood then that I was no longer in my body. I must have died in the accident. Yet here I was, still conscious, still aware, still me. Death, I realised, wasn't an ending, but a transition. A continuation of existence in a different form. I moved forward through what felt like empty space. There was nothing around me, no physical sensations except a sense of movement. The space itself seemed to have a slightly different quality than what I was used to. The air, if I could call it that, felt thicker, more substantial, and had a subtle coloration I couldn't quite define. I was completely lucid, thinking clearly. I felt younger somehow, lighter, filled with curiosity about what would come next. I wasn't sad about leaving my life behind. It felt like I'd completed something and was moving on to something new. After what could have been seconds or eternity, I felt myself emerging from darkness, moving at incredible speed. Around me materialised a landscape similar to Earth, trees, rocks, mountainside. In the distance, I could see a figure sitting at the edge of a cliff, looking out over an abyss. As I drew closer, I recognised with shock that the figure was me, my own body. I rejoined this body, curious about what I was looking at, and found myself gazing into an immense light unlike anything I'd ever seen. Yet somehow I recognised it. This was the same light I'd seen threading between the moments of my life, only now I was facing its source. It was vast, powerful, and radiantly alive. In this light, I recognised something I glimpsed in rare moments throughout my life, in the silent wonder of a winter morning when I was 10, in the overwhelming love I felt when my youngest cousin was born, in moments of deep connection with others. This light had always been there, always accessible if only I'd known where to look. The light wasn't just a visual phenomenon. It emanated warmth, healing, and most of all, love. Not the conditional love we often experience in life, but something pure and absolute. I knew with certainty that this light contained everything. All knowledge, all comfort, all needs fulfilled. It was what I'd been unconsciously searching for my entire life. Kneeling before this light, I felt an overwhelming desire to merge with it, to become part of it. I sensed I was being presented with a choice. Without hesitation, with a heart full of gratitude, I chose the light. I leaped forward, and for one eternal moment, I was one with everything. The next instant I was back in my body, lying on rocky ground. I could hear voices shouting in the distance. I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt frozen, unwilling to work. The same calm voice I'd heard at the beginning of the accident spoke again. Breathe in. I forced my muscles to obey, and suddenly air rushed into my lungs with a painful gasp. My senses came back in a rush. The taste of dirt and blood in my mouth. The smell of petrol and burned rubber. The sound of my brother Alex calling my name from somewhere above me. Pain flared throughout my body, especially in my left leg and ribs. I opened my eyes to see I was lying about 20 metres from our van, which had come to rest on its side against a cluster of trees. How I'd gotten so far from the vehicle, I had no idea. In the distance, I could hear sirens wailing. For the next hour, as paramedics arrived and worked to stabilise us and get us up the mountainside, I experienced something extraordinary. It was as if a window between worlds had opened and was slowly closing. While I was firmly back in my physical body, experiencing all its pain and limitations, I could still catch glimpses of that other realm, flashes of light, whispers of that perfect understanding I'd experienced. I could see connections between people that I'd never noticed before. Threads of light linking the paramedics to each other, to us, to others far away. I saw how their care for us wasn't just professional, but deeply personal, part of their own life's meaning. I could sense things about them. One was worried about his daughter's illness. Another had just fallen in love. These perceptions faded gradually as I was loaded into the helicopter that would take us to the hospital in Geneva. Later, I learned that we had all survived the accident, though not without injuries. Dad had a concussion and a broken collarbone. Mum had broken her arm and had several deep wounds. Alex escaped with minor injuries, just cuts and bruises. Ben had a broken wrist and a mild concussion. I'd suffered a broken leg, 2 broken ribs, and internal bleeding that required surgery. In the hospital, when I was finally able to speak, I tried to tell my family what I'd experienced. They listened with a mixture of concern and confusion. The doctors explained it away, as hallucinations caused by trauma, oxygen deprivation, or the medications I'd been given, but I knew what I'd seen was real, more real than anything I'd experienced before. Recovery was slow. We spent 2 weeks in the Swiss hospital before being cleared to fly home to England. Our European adventure had ended differently than planned, but we were grateful to be alive. During those quiet days of healing, I had time to reflect on everything I'd seen and felt. The most important realization was that the light connecting every moment of our lives is always there, always accessible. Death isn't something to fear. It's simply another transition, another moment in our existence. But I also understood that my time in this life wasn't finished. There were things I still needed to experience, people I needed to connect with. In the years since the accident, I've changed in ways my 17-year-old self could never have imagined. I'm more patient, more compassionate. I don't worry about small things anymore. I know that every thought, every action creates ripples that extend far beyond what we can see. Some days, the memory of that light feels distant, obscured by the demands and distractions of everyday life. But in quiet moments, watching the sunset or holding a loved one's hand, I can feel it again. The light is everywhere, threading through every moment of our existence. It's in the spaces between heartbeats, between breaths, between thoughts. It's always been there, it always will be. And knowing that has made all the difference.